Hi, everyone. Hello. I'd ask while I'm giving the presentation that you hold questions. We'll have a question section at the end. This panel is going to be about plurality, which is, in the most simplistic terms, the concept of more than one person inhabiting a body in some fashion. It means a lot of things to a lot of people. We're going to break down some of that today. As a content warning, before we get into this, we're going to talk about plurality. We're going to talk about trauma in the abstract, nothing direct, and we're also going to talk about dissociation. If any of these things get to you, I would encourage you to leave the instance. And that'll crop up in a few minutes here. The two sections I'm going to talk about today is how the medical system treats plurality, since that is most people's first encounter with it, and how plurality looks as a whole from both the community and from a functional standpoint. If you are unfamiliar, there is a lot of plurality in media, such as very bad portrayals in movies like The Secret Window or Split or every cop drama. Usually it is portrayed very poorly. There is a show that tried to do it correctly called The United States of Terra. It's okay. Either way, we're going to talk about how the medical system treats plurality first and foremost, and why that is separate from how most people experience plurality. So plurality is generally associated with the medical diagnostic criteria of dissociative identity disorder, also referred to as DID, or other specified dissociative disorder, which is OSDD, which has various types. DID and OSDD are not plurality. They're a group of symptoms that people have that can be treated. It is like saying that gender dysphoria is not being trans. DID is not plurality. It's a set of symptoms specifically for treatment. You can be considered cured from DID and still be plural, and we'll get into that pretty soon. Now, plurality tends to, when it is traumagenic, which is a term I will use quite a bit when we talk about the medical system, it tends to form very early on. Everything that I say here is going to come with an asterisk. Everyone's situations are different. The two overarching theories for how it does form is the container theory versus the everyone starts plural theory. They're not super well defined, and ultimately they aren't super important, but quickly explaining both, the trauma container theory is that when you are very young, and you get consistent trauma from people who are supposed to be safe, you can't handle it. And you keep having to dissociate over and over again, enough that your brain splits off another individual to handle the additional trauma. It's a very simple concept of you have a cup full of trauma you can handle, and it overflows, and the brain needs somewhere to put it. The other theory is that everyone starts as many different individuals, many different types of conflicting individual, and they all converge over the course of childhood. And with DID or OSDD, because of trauma, that doesn't tend to happen. I'm not going to say which one I subscribe to, because I don't really subscribe to either of them. It doesn't super matter. Plurality within the medical system, traumagenic plurality, is very focused on trauma and trauma recovery, and also dissociation. When I talk about dissociation, it's something that a little over half the population tends to experience at least once in their lifetime. Dissociation is when, in a very light definition, you feel disconnected from your body in some fashion. sometimes enough to not have memory, sometimes enough to feel like you're not there at all. Dissociation is the mechanic by which plurality functions. If you do have another person in your body with you, them being around requires your dissociation in a lot of cases. Dissociation is not bad. It's a way for your brain to protect you, but it can be maladaptive in some cases. When you go to work on DID specifically, when you are very young in that instance, usually what tends to happen is that your brain will spin people off and form individuals to fulfill specific roles. These roles are very reductive to use with adults in particular, and very reductive to use outside of a medical setting, but I'm going to go over them. The most common that people will talk about is the role of a protector, which I feel like what they do is implied. They will handle tough situations. They'll get the person out of trouble. Oftentimes they can be very aggressive to those around them when the person who they're protecting cannot be. It's pretty implicit with the name of protector. There's a role considered a persecutor, which ideally should be someone who is willing to push even more, someone willing to consistently criticize those in your life causing problems. But most of the time what happens is instead that criticism goes to you. If there's any systems here with persecutors, I want you to understand it is not their fault. They are the way they are. That the brain makes them do this, and they may feel very, very different in the mode that they are persecuting versus the mode that they are normally. The reason why this happens is because they are being used as a vehicle for your self-hatred or persecution, for reliving trauma or whatever it is. It is not necessarily them, it is disorder. It is important to talk to them about it, but it is still disorder. There's the role of host, which is a word I do not like, but is used in the medical community. It's the functional part, the person who tends to go to work or go do groceries, the person who's out most of the time. There's a caretaker, which is the person who tends to be soft, who takes care of anyone who may be younger in age in the system, which is something we'll get into in a moment. And then often used in the medical system, something that I really quite don't like is the role of child. And that is defined as a regressive state a person goes into when they encounter certain things. Age does exist in systems. People can exist in a state of perpetual age. And medicalizing that kind of regression, the role is called child. There are many, many roles. If you look it up online, you'll find anywhere from 4 to 12,000. There's just so many roles people have, but those are the common ones used within DID. Roles only really truly matter for therapy. It is okay to understand them, but if you're dealing with a plural system and you are defining them by their role, I would urge you not to. Most individuals are actualized to the point where they don't exist solely to do a function. And giving that same respect is very important. It's more nuanced in all cases. Plurality within people is discovered in many different ways. I'm talking about for an individual that may have DID or OSDD, these things tend to have a few different through lines. Oftentimes it's discovered in therapy. they're talking about trauma and something switches in. It is often discovered because people around them notice that they are extremely forgetful or do a lot or make purchases that they don't understand, and they bring it up, and eventually they find that plurality happens. The most common way that I've seen is that when your brain feels like you're safe enough to start tackling things, the walls slowly come down. This usually happens in adulthood, but can happen earlier. When the brain feels like you're able to process the trauma, it tends to dump it all on you at once, and it can be very destructive. And generally in those cases is when I have seen folks realize that they are. Treatment for plurality involves mostly trauma work and also getting each individual to work together. There are two main pathways people go down for treatment, and oftentimes they switch between them. I'm going to use a word very common in the plural community. It does not mean the same thing in the medical community. It's called integration. Integration is not when everyone combines. Integration is when everyone works together. It is functional multiplicity, functional plurality. It is breaking down the barriers and walls to no longer have amnesia, to no longer have dissociative episodes and random switches, but still maintaining that sense of self. The other thing people do is called fusion. It is exactly what it sounds like, where everyone tries to become something new and something whole, where they're all together. Both paths are valid. I would urge you not to look down on anyone doing any kind of treatment that they feel is appropriate. When plurality is discovered later on, it tends to be a pretty slow build and then a huge burst. If you as an individual are worried that the slow build is happening, the two exercises that I talk about a lot are getting a notebook, putting it in front of you, having a pen in your hand, and not choosing to write anything, but letting it happen anyway. That's a good way for folks to communicate. The other method is effectively imagining a place in your mind where you can leave a note, and that note is an invitation to speak. Everything is about speaking and being heard. Most of the time, if people are upset, if someone other than who has been hosting is upset, it's because they feel like they aren't being listened to. Most of the time, listening to someone who hasn't been host will help them step into a more productive role than being antagonistic. It can often take a long time. If you do have DID or OSDD, treatment tends to be pretty effective if someone is skilled at it. In medical systems around the world, there's not very many people who are skilled at it. As a resource, if you're interested in learning about the therapeutic techniques and more in the weeds medical stuff with plurality, I would heavily recommend looking into a YouTube channel called the CTAD Clinic. It's a clinic outside of the UK. If anyone's familiar with Multiplicity and Me, it is the clinic that Jess went to. Dr. Mike Lloyd is the director there and is extremely knowledgeable and well studied. No longer having DID or OSDD doesn't mean you're not plural. I said that at the beginning, but curing the symptoms tends to be the goal always. And it is important not to be protective of the things that make you dysfunctional. It's important to understand that problems do not make you who you are if you undergo treatment. I also want to point out that after the walls come down and you've had experiences, doubt that you are actually plural or have these things is part of the experience. It's a symptom of it. This is because the brain is trying to protect you, as it has your whole life. And many people who aren't the main host may be very cagey or have memories they explicitly do not want to share, because that's how things have functioned the entire time that person is alive. The main symptoms of traumagenic plurality are dissociation and amnesia, and it comes in so many forms. I rambled for a while. Before we get into a practical sense, can you raise your hand if you have a question at this time? Cool.
Yeah.
You do? Come here. Go ahead and grab this.
Yeah.
Are you?
Grab that. Oh. Does this work on desktop?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes, it does.
yeah, so I was just wondering, because I've known somebody that's a plural system of like 20 plus 30 individuals, and I heard you say that the term host is a term that a lot of people don't like, and I was curious as to why, because I don't know much.
Sure. Thank you for that. The term host implies that there is a main person. There's a person more worthy of autonomy in some cases. It has a lot of implications because of the connotation. We use default front for the person who is out the most, which is currently me. Other people don't use terms for it at all. There's default front, there's main front, there is an older term is functional individual, which I don't like that for a lot of reasons. But people will pick terms that they identify with. When I say host, I'm talking about it in a strictly medical sense. That's what the medical complex tends to use. And as we get into the next section here, and I talk about how systems do actually function, I'm going to use the terms that I'm used to using. And so instead of parts, I will use headmates. Instead of host, I will use default front. Because living as a plural individual is very different than being defined by a diagnosis or diagnostic criteria. The last thing I want to say before we move into the next section here is that plurality in a traumagenic sense is extremely well researched worldwide. It has shown the signs and symptoms across many, many cultures as objectively as we can prove psychological diagnoses. We have proven it. I want to read a quick quote from a meta-analysis of all the studies that had come before under the Journal of Trauma and Dissociation. I've talked before about how different headmates will exhibit different physiological traits, such as things down to having a different blood sugar response to certain foods. This is something that is well studied, and it's not just that. I'm going to read the whole quote. Case reports and studies using small groups of DID patients and controls who simulate different alternate identities have found significant physiologic differences in DID patients compared to controls that manifest in a variety of behavioral ways. These include differences in visual acuity, medication response, allergies, plasma glucose levels, heart rate, blood pressure readings, galvanic skin response, muscle tension, laterality, immune function, and evoked potential patterns. Functional magnetic resonance imaging activation. They start using terms I have no idea. I'm ending the quote, but you get it. It is a physical thing that happens to you too. And there's a lot of people who believe that it is just like a disorder where it occurs entirely in someone's mind. It doesn't. If you ever use the term for yourself that it's all in my head, that's true of your entire experience in the world. You can't exist outside of that. This is a very well-researched diagnosis and disorder. And it's been proven as objectively as we can. So if you're ever in doubt. All right, moving on. We're going to talk about plurality in a practical sense. This is where it's important to understand the context. If you meet someone who's plural, are plural yourself, everything kind of exists on a spectrum of experiences. Everything I say has exceptions. I would urge you to listen to the person talking before coming back here and referencing things, unless there's mass amount of confusion. I've talked about traumagenic plurality specifically. It doesn't always happen early. In the medical system, they think it does. There's another type of system, and it's a blanket term. There's lots of different types of system, but the blanket term for someone who's not traumagenic is endogenic. So if I use these terms, that is what that means. It is plurality born out of not trauma, or not saying it's trauma. Either way. The most important distinction to make when you talk to plural people, I wouldn't say the most important, one of the most important distinctions to make is how connected everyone is. There's a spectrum, and on the extremely connected, everyone's very kind of soup, is median. And on the other end of the spectrum, where everyone is completely separate, it's called a multiple system. These terms aren't super important. I would just get the experience of the person you're talking to. But I will use them during this presentation. A median system, a lot of identity can be mixed, a lot of consciousness can be mixed, which is something we'll get into. A median system is a system where all the headmates are not particularly separate. If you switch between headmates, it may be a slow, gradual thing, or the person you're talking to may be feeling like the same person but slightly modified. Median encompasses things such as mood states, which I won't get into this presentation. It encompasses a lot of things. But effectively, it means that folks aren't that separate. They may share memories or consciousness or whatever. Whereas a multiple system, they tend to be very separate, fully actualized individuals. They may not share consciousness at all. They may be able to think at the same time or have their own experiences in parallel. On that front, we need to talk about consciousness. This is going to get very heady and very weird, and I would recommend, if you have any questions about it, asking them during the Q&A section. A monoconscious system is a system that shares one consciousness, not who they are, not their identity, not their thoughts, not necessarily their memories either, but usually it is also memories. A monoconscious system is one consciousness, and that means I am Cress, and if I am a monoconscious system and someone else switches in, I'll use another headmate of mine, for example, I am Meadow. The person saying I is the same consciousness. That consciousness continued. I am Cress, I am Meadow. The I stays the same. It doesn't mean I am Meadow, but it means the consciousness saying I am is the same consciousness. I told you it was very heady. It is difficult to explain. A polyconscious system is the opposite. I am a polyconscious system. So when other folks are around near me, they have their own thoughts and sometimes baffle me. Most of you know Echo. Echo hangs out with me all the time. And they will talk to me. We can have full conversations. We can exist simultaneously. we're just separate individuals in the body. The media portrayal of like some kind of host and some kind of extra person on the side tends to be what most people think of. But effectively, different consciousness, separate consciousnesses. And monoconscious and median are related for hopefully obvious reasons, just like polyconscious and multiple systems are related. This is a spectrum. This is not binary in both cases. It can mean a lot of different things. There are terms for different places on that spectrum that I won't get into because they're very heady, but those are the important spectrums here. Now, within systems between headmates, there are more ways headmates can be, and it comes down to a few traits. The first is memory sharing. So I talked about amnesia within traumagenic plurality. That is not the same thing, but it is related. If memory sharing is around being able to share memories, it is not always sharing memories, even if that is the case. It is the ability to. For example, I have a person in my system named Lyric who can share his memories with anyone he wants, but chooses not to. He has very good memory sharing. He just doesn't do it. Whereas Echo in my system can also share memories with almost everyone and chooses to do so openly. Anyone can access that. On the flip side, I cannot share memories with anyone. I am incapable. I haven't figured it out. Maybe I'll get there. So if I'm by myself and something happens, nobody else knows. So that's fun. Likewise, communication. Your ability to talk to other headmates, and this usually varies per headmate. Communication can be either completely free-flowing up to the point of being able to share thoughts and feelings effortlessly. And it can also be completely...
Questions?
I know, we'll get there. It can be completely impossible. Again, using my system as an example, I cannot communicate internally at all. I am considered a black box to most people. We have to talk out loud or do sign language or message each other on Discord. That's how it be. The other thing that can vary per headmate is a headmate's age. And there are young headmates in endogenic systems, though it is most common in traumagenic systems, and that is because age is considered in the medical system to be based on a regression to protect the individual from something that happened. So what ends up happening when someone is aged down is they do not and cannot process certain things. Sometimes it's they can't process memories past a certain point. Sometimes it's they can't process concepts. And very often, if those things are brought up, they will break down. This is why therapy within traumagenic plurality is extremely difficult. Because sometimes very difficult to handle traumas are held by someone very young and avoidant. And it's very hard to negotiate with a very young, avoidant, traumatized child. There are other reasons folks might be aged down. That is the main one and the most common one. It could also be an identity thing, which I'm not going to get into, but the main one is regression. Okay. The last kind of spectrum I'd like to talk about is fragmented headmates versus fully actualized headmates. As someone who started out as a fragment, fragmented headmates are kind of like regressed headmates in that they exist to do a function and they do not process anything outside of that function. they can seem like they are. They can seem a certain way, but they only exist to do a thing. Sometimes that thing is to get out of social situations. Sometimes that thing is to deal with memories that crop up. They can be sent out for whatever reason. But they aren't always permanently this way. And if a fragment spends a lot of time in front, they often become very actualized. So someone who is self-actualized is just, you've met people before, right? Anyway. Fragments are a difficult thing to talk about. I do believe they're worthy of attention and care and autonomy. But you have to understand the limitations of their processing. What time is it? Okay. We're going to do 2 more concepts, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm sorry if I've filled your heads with a ton of them, but that's why I left half of this time for questions. The first thing I want to talk about is dissociative memory. That is a term that I just started using. It's if you are plural and you have it, you may intuitively know what it means, but I'm going to explain it. It is a type of amnesia. Dissociative memory is when you go to remember something and it's not yours, and so it fades. Or you're not in your element and you were very dissociated, and it's like waking up from a dream where you have the memory of the dream and it fades very, very quickly. Dissociative memory happens when someone is very dissociated and not able to really process what's going on. So if someone is in control of the body, which I've been using the term front for. I realize I should have defined that earlier on. C'est la vie. Someone's in control of the body. They're in front, and someone else is watching that person in control. That someone else watching may have full awareness and full ability to understand what's going on in the moment. But the next time they front, they may not retain that. It may be impossible for them to get back to it. Like a dream, it fades away. For headmates that tend to stay inside the head and not venture out much, sometimes their entire experience in front is dissociative, that their only real memories are being in the headspace. And when they come out in front, it's really difficult for them to remember it. The opposite can be true, where someone who is often in front goes inside, and in the moment they may understand that they're there, but they won't remember it again. It is possible to move past this, but it just tends to be related to how dissociation works. I've talked a lot about people being in front now. When you talk to plural people, they use a term called switching, which is just moving who's in front. It's switching who's in front. That's the whole bit. I'd recommend, if you have someone you're close to who is plural, I'd recommend just talking to them about their experiences. If you do see systems out in the wild and you don't understand them or find the way that they express it unsavory, I would urge you to take their experience at face value. There's a huge problem worldwide of individuals who are plural being discounted or being told that they're fake from both medical professionals and in interpersonal relationships. I would say it doesn't matter. Like any experience, everything is subjective. And if you think someone is faking it, you probably just think they're annoying. It's okay to think people are annoying. I would encourage folks, much like with any other identity or way of being, to take people at their word and treat them with respect at what they are saying. You don't have to engage with people if you don't want to. You don't have to be their best friend. But when you meet a plural person, please just treat them as they are. All right. Questions? Who wants to go first?
Whoa.
You. Come here.
Alright. Can I grab it? So when it comes to like plurality, like I've been listening to, I was wondering, like, is it like a fixed number of identities within the body, or is it like, how is there a limit to how many identities? Because you mentioned like you got Echo, Meadow, you, Cress, like.
Yeah. I
Okay.
Let me take the mic back and I'll address that.
All right.
Okay, so there is no limit. There's patterns that I've noticed where endogenic systems tend to be smaller, but there's really no limit. I myself have 19, which is a much larger number than most people. There is a type of system called a polyfragmented system that may have hundreds or thousands, and I can't pretend to understand what that would be like. It's a well-known thing that some people just have an enormous amount of alters or headmates or whatever term they feel comfortable with. There doesn't seem to be an upper limit. I don't know how that functions. I have met 2 polyfragmented systems in my life, and I was never able to quite understand how they function. But it is something that exists, and yeah. Good question. If you have a question, just come up front and I'll hand you the mic. You can get in line if you want, even. Hi, Tycho. There you go.
Well, I was going to, first say how absolutely refreshing this talk is. I largely, every time I've communicated with systems, and like many people, it's been somewhat difficult to understand what's happening, understanding the complexity of it, and considering it is portrayed so correctly diversely in the media, where it often you may come with the incorrect assumptions. I think it was incredibly useful to have such a didactic version of this, a very much teaching. A teaching lecture, essentially. It was fantastic. I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited to learn. I'm so excited that finally it's almost a different section of existing that has been closed off to me, and I'm very grateful that someone can finally put words to things I've seen, not just in people who are openly plural, but those that I suspect are dealing with plurality or are secretly plural or don't even know that they are plural, whether that's through dissociative, indigenic, or traumagenic. There's many things I could ask, but I don't want to take the mic. There's plenty of people here to talk. So one thing I will ask, actually there's 2 things, but I will leave it to just this one because it's funny and simple. So is there ever like a war for fronting? Like, have you ever run into a situation where potentially a fragment and a proper headmate are kind of competing at the same time, and there's sort of this awkward battle? I'm unsure how that would go.
Yes. There's often a war in systems that aren't getting along very well. Part of the dysfunction can be that war. Early on, when we were getting everything figured out and we're not particularly functional, every now and then there would be a kid in my system who will remain nameless who would take over forcibly, grab the phone, and order Taco Bell. They just wanted Taco Bell. This can be a problem if you use your imagination. It can cause a lot of issues, but if there is a fight or some kind of conflict, whoever is the most powerful tends to make it into front. But generally, you try not to do those kind of things. There's a limit that the brain has on its ability to process multiple people existing. And if there's too many people near front or in front at the same time, you can get a very weird thing that I like to call mental strife. Feels like groggy electricity is shocking you constantly and can remove functions such as speaking or moving. Your brain can only handle so much. It is multi-threaded, but not that far. It's like having a kernel panic if anyone does computers. Your brain can only handle so much, and if you fight too hard or push system stuff too hard, you can get this very unfortunate thing. I call it mental strife. That's the term I came up with. I'm sure there's many other terms people have used for it, but it's a pretty, especially for multiple systems, people who are very separate and can think at the same time. It can be very disorienting and difficult, and when you're early on and just experimenting in good faith, you can cause this state. We did that all the time when trying to force switches or trying to be a certain way or having multiple people in front at the same time. This can all overload your brain. Oftentimes there's a lot of, especially in traumagenic plurality, there's a lot of internal strife and conflict. It can get extremely intense, and it can be really difficult, which is why it's treatment. But over time, people tend to learn how to work with each other and live in a very functional, multiple way. All right. Next up.
Thank you. Forgive me. Oh, am I coming in okay?
You're good. You're good.
Okay. I'm sorry, because I was on the later end, so forgive me if you already answered this. I guess my first question would be, how does one realize that they have plurality? And then I guess my subsequent to that would be, out of the, I'm sorry, what's the proper term? Is it the different persons, systems?
I think the mic stopped.
Headmates, alters,
headmates.
There's lots of terms.
Is it possible also for a headmate to air quote go offline for a while where they won't be accessed?
Thank you for your questions. I did answer how it's found out. Effectively, there's a lot of signs like amnesia, and oftentimes you're just screamed at by your headmates until you figure it out. I mentioned early on in the session there's a YouTube channel named the CTAD Clinic. If you look at one of their very first videos they posted, it goes into great detail about people who discover plurality. The other thing you mentioned, headmates can go dormant. It is extremely normal and happens all the time. Sometimes there's just people who aren't as active, and it can happen for a variety of reasons. Most of the time, it's not a big deal. And it just kind of happens. Sometimes it can be very frightful. I had a system member come back whose last memory was in 2009, which, if you'll notice, is not the year 2025. And they had a hard time sharing memories, and so it was very difficult for them to adjust. But most of the time, it's more of a fade in and out, and it's not harmful or weird.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. So, just to clarify right now, before I ask a question, which one of you is fronting right now?
I can grab that from you. My name is Cress. I came about a couple months ago, and if you see me in the Discord and I look like I know everything and am, but also very new, that is why.
Okay. So you mentioned that if you might remember something you might experience something, but you can't tell anybody else about it. Does that mean that, for instance, like with this current talk, that you might not be able to talk about this later, like talk about it from your perspective later, for example? Or I'm just trying to understand how this memory disparity works.
That's a good question. So when I talk about amnesia in plural systems, most of the time what I'm talking about is related to trauma and remembering traumatic events. There are certain things that can often trigger switches or can cause immediate problems. And what that effectively is the brain trying to cut you off from you knowing it, or another headmate doing that even, if they are convinced it's for your best interest, whether it is or not. For my own personal experiences, I have every memory since we were like 11, 12. That is not true of anyone else in my head, but that is true of me. Usually there's a state that is not normal that causes dissociative memory. So, for example, I've talked about Lyric before. Lyric does not want things to be remembered, and learned how to put my other headmate Echo into a state where Echo was very like loopy and low power and not all there. So while Echo would be there in the moment, the second they got back into front and were fully able to perceive things, the memory just faded away immediately.
One headmate was sabotaging. Sorry.
No, you can just talk.
One headmate was sabotaging another one.
The question, they were asking for clarification on one headmate was sabotaging another. It wasn't sabotage as much as consensual. Lyric likes privacy. That's all it was. There is the sabotage factor, and there's a lot that headmates can do to mess with each other. There's a lot of things they can do to be antagonistic. But for a lot of people, that's not the normal state. And a lot of these functions that can be used for antagonism are often used for just expression of autonomy or privacy or things that people tend to like having. Does that answer your question? You good?
Sort of. It's mostly... So, what did you mean earlier then when you said that that if something happens, like when you are in control or in front and nobody else is around, that nobody knows about it?
Memory sharing can be any memory regardless if someone is there. It happens internally. What I was referring to with memory sharing with myself is that because I can't share my own memories, if someone is not in front with me or near me to witness it themselves, they don't get the memory.
So the memory... So what happens is the memory... Do you want me to grab that?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so what happens is the memory is there, but inaccessible?
Our memories are all separate because we are separate. You don't know, if you have a friend, you don't know your friend's memories unless you were there for them. It's the same as that. Because they weren't there,
Okay.
they weren't in front, they weren't witnessing it, they don't have the memory.
Sure.
Is that good?
Yep, that's it. Other than
Cool.
Echo and Cress are two... That's the same... Fuck, I forget the word you used for the physical being. I forget the word for the physical being that you used. Same body, two different... Are those two accounts connected to the same body, for lack of a better word? That's the last question.
Consciousness.
Yeah. So I We have different accounts for different things, but we do share a body. The way I work personally is different from the rest of my system in that you might as well just see us as roommates. It's a way that it can happen, but we don't share anything automatically, which is not how a lot of systems function, but it is how I function. I wish I was different, but yeah, Echo is shares a body with me. Echo's not here right now, I don't think. Can you squeeze it? Okay. Echo's not here right now. And yeah, so.
Okay, that's it.
Cool.
That's it. Oh, and your tracker's malfunctioning on your right leg.
Cool.
I was about to say that.
I just thought I should say something about that. Thanks for answering the questions.
Fixed. We're good. Next up.
Wow, in the time I was queuing up, it seems like all my questions almost got answered. so yeah, I was going to ask, like, how much memory does another individual retain when they take over, since some can't share their memories, but pretty much explained that already. What I do want to ask is, how would this affect the day-to-day lives? Like, have you had any issues with trying to find a job or relationships, or how would this affect you personally?
So that's something that actually varies from person to person. It can range from being completely disordered, you have really bad amnesia, you get random switches and nobody can tell what's happening because the memory sharing is not there. And early on, for me personally, in my system, there was a lot of dysfunction. We would get random switches, or we would get switches of people who weren't sharing memories every 2 minutes for an entire day. It's disorienting and awful. This is why, another reason why it's a mental disorder. Plurality is not. But that kind of function where it hurts your everyday life is, and requires treatment, whether from a professional or I hope people find something. On the other end, there's people who have perfect memory sharing and communication. There's people who've figured this stuff out. And a lot of systems you meet that are out as systems already do have all of this. DID is pretty common, relatively, as far as mental health disorders go. It's I think 1 to 1.5%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is actually a lot. There's a lot of people with DID who don't treat themselves as separate individuals. Even if they're getting all these things, they consider like pieces of themselves or something along those lines. And the way that they find function is valid for them. If you are plural, you don't have to tell people. You can work together and not have a front where you are plural. I've thought about this a lot, where early on, we were very forthcoming with it, and it ended up shaping all of our relationships around each of us as individuals. And I think about a universe where I didn't do that, where we just got therapy and like tried to minimize the switches. I would consider that masking, because it would have been, but it's valid if it's the way they want to function. And now I live a life, and we live a life where it would be lying by omission to not identify ourselves, and people would be able to tell. We can't impersonate each other very well. None of us can. Well, there's one person who can, but most of us can't. We're not good actors. And because we're all known as individuals already, can't close Pandora's box there. It would be lying to be identifying as a specific individual in my system to the people who already know. But it is not bad to behave as if you are a singlet. Behave as if you are not plural. It's not a bad way to be. That's just not how we are, and that's not how systems who are out and talking to you are. Next up.
So my question was, you said that there are there could be multiple consciousnesses in one body. Are these are people with the plurality? I guess was that what we're calling it. Sorry, I forgot the name. Do they develop these consciousnesses, or are they born with a set number?
Most people are not born with a set number. I'm sure that exists somewhere in the world. In traumagenic plurality, what happens is that the brain spins up a new one, basically. It's like, I need somewhere to put this being, here's a consciousness for you. That's not how it always works. And someone gaining consciousness can take a lot of different forms. But it is only rarely that I've seen people who have a super set number and that never changed and they've always been that way. At least in traumagenic plurality. In endogenic plurality, I see a lot of systems of 2. It's a very common number, 2 and 3. But that experiences vary, and what a consciousness is very philosophical. When I say consciousness in this context, I have a solid line of what is me, and me feeling like me, and I have my memories and my skills and way of speaking and way of acting. And someone else in my system, that line is different. They have their own memories, their own way of speaking, their own way of being. So the thing that happens in someone with one consciousness is that line continues regardless of who it is. With me, with polyconscious systems, those lines run in parallel. Most of my day, I am watching Echo do things. That is most of my day. I am unique in that I can't leave front. I can't switch out. I'm always here. I've been here the whole time. If that drop out. Anyway, so this is not normal, but it. I dropped it. This is not normal, but it's how I work. And so anyone who is fronting alongside me, because I don't switch. We are both there. I'm just choosing not to move.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
So, yeah. So what I'm getting it from that is that there's a specific trigger for people to I guess, if a new one pops up.
So, new ones popping up is a concept I failed to touch on called splitting. And it's called splitting because usually it's an individual forms multiple consciousnesses or people or however you want to define it. And splitting can happen for a lot of reasons. Oftentimes in traumagenic systems, it is based on trauma. It's something too big happens and a split happens. There can be other triggers. I talked about polyfragmented systems where they have hundreds of members. Oftentimes, a random look from someone may do it. It all depends. Splitting for us in the last 5 or so years has been identity-based identity shifts. So someone will incubate in another headmate for a while, and that headmate experiences a lot of inner conflict and turmoil about conflicting identity, and then the brain just we're putting this somewhere. And so instead of resolving the identity conflict, it becomes a new person. Imagine if you're thinking about being something else and that someone just pops up who is that, and you're no longer feeling that. That's how it's worked with us for the last 5 years. But a lot of different things can happen. In the very medical traumagenic thing, it is almost always trauma related. But I've met endogenic systems who get so attached to a concept that since their brain already knows how to split people off, that embodiment becomes someone. This is often called fictives, where the brain makes someone based on an existing idea or character. So, for example, I have someone in my system who formed as a fictive for Morph from Treasure Planet. She does not identify as Morph, and none of the fictives in my system identify as the original people that they were born out of. But your brain can model someone after an existing concept if it already knows how to split people. Brains are wild and seem to have a mind of their own, pun intended. All right, next question, please. Just as a heads up, we have about 15 minutes left before we gotta close up. So
I'm gonna leave this at just one of my questions. Is kind of from personal experience. Is it normal? Because I know you brought up divergent memories. Is it also normal to like retain memories but not be able to pinpoint kind of when they happen and have them be kind of
God, I fucking love amnesia.
can you just nod? You're asking if memories can be kind of disconnected from time and space. Yes, very often. But this is also true of non-plural people. When you're dealing with dissociation or dealing with any kind of coping that the brain does, plural or not, you will get memory shifts and memory functions. Everyone's memory is extremely imperfect. You have no idea how imperfect it is. Plural or not, people's memories are easy to manipulate and easy to be changed in their own mind without any question. A lot of what's going on in the world is playing on that fact. Memory is only like a scribbled on pencil that can be rewritten. And it is especially true for people who get regular amnesia that memories can be very difficult to get a grasp on, and it's very hard to hold on to the absolute truth. So you tend to not feel super confident in them. This is true of everyone. This is not a function of plurality. Nobody's memories are particularly accurate at or good at being accurate. They can be accurate enough to remember them. I promise. There's so much with memory. Next question, unless you need to clarify.
Yeah.
You were very
So the reason why I ask is because I've got like some that are like, I know it's not of like being in front in the real world, and I've got blank spaces in my real world memory where I just don't remember anything at all. So that's kind of why I was asking.
Can you get back? Nope.
I lagged. My bad.
Yes, I mean that's one way to do it.
And it's gone. Oh, it's in the screen below.
It's underneath the
text.
architect VR.
I'm
it's
terribly sorry about my
it was camouflaged. Yeah, memory like that it's not a unique to plural thing. It is very common to have those kind of things. There are plenty of people who don't remember most of their childhood. You know, I'm sure a lot of you have met people who have said that. It's just a real thing. It's a coping mechanism, but also no, we're imperfect.
All right.
Yo, hello. A pleasure to meet you. I've never seen you before. It's an honor. I've been trying to think of a more eloquent way to put this, so I'm just going to flatly say it. But while everybody is, while each individual has their own things that would apply differently, I'm thinking, what would be, in terms to you, the things that are harmful and things that are helpful in your being of a system? For instance, I am a trans individual. Something that is, while, can be indirectly harmful to a lot of people, such as a misgendering or, non-gender affirming, would hit me more, intensely. So in that sense, is there anything that you would say impacts you more greatly? Is there something that is more directly, like something that is to be avoided, or something that is more helpful as a system?
That's a fantastic question. It is a through line. Like being trans, people hate it when you ignore what they're saying or their experiences. That is the through line. If you ignore a headmate's autonomy or just treat them like an extension of someone else, that's going to be hurtful. I don't like introducing myself as Echo's headmate because everyone here knows Echo. I don't like to be under the lens of that personally. Some people don't mind. That is something that hurts me. It's why I'm using a different account than they do. But that may not be true for everyone. It is really, truly, the thing that hurts the most is a lack of respect for their experience. This is true of so many things and so many identities. When you meet someone who is plural, you can ask. Something that can be very difficult, especially in systems with a lot of people, is trying to keep track of everyone. I would encourage people who are plural to have an enormous amount of patience. It's hard enough to remember someone's name. It can be very difficult to remember 19 people's names and pronouns and identity and quirks, all housed in a body. And it tends to be more effort, and it's okay to acknowledge that. But at the same time, if you are someone who is talking to someone who is plural, do your best to respect them. Be realistic about your limitations. There can be people who are hurt in certain ways when you're trying your best, and that's just a true thing of interpersonal stuff. Just listen, basically. Something that can be affirming is when someone is struggling with feeling fake or feeling like they are not considered a full individual, is just specific reassurances about that. I don't struggle with that personally, but a lot of people in my system do. It's hard to, when someone has met a headmate other than you first, it's really difficult to understand that they see you as an individual, that you aren't just their shadow, because of that relation. And there's a lot of very unique to plurality trauma that can build up because of that. You know your own experiences in that you have your memories and identity, and when someone tries to treat you as if you are just someone else, it can be very hurtful. Meanwhile, if someone is like median and everything is mixed and doesn't really care about the separation, sometimes it can cause distress to treat them separately. I have a partner who was median for a long time and asked me to stop like pointing out when I could tell a switch happened because it made them think too hard about it. Just listen. Just listen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pretty Bird.
Hello. So you mentioned how there's some could like talk to each other in the head as things are happening, right? Does that mean hypothetically, if it was plural and I had headmates like that, would they be talking shit to me when I'm playing Counter-Strike?
God, Frost.
Yes.
God damn it, Frost.
God damn it. Absolutely.
God fucking damn it.
So I can't communicate with anyone. I can't communicate with anyone, but I can hear them. They can talk to me sometimes. I can't talk back.
Echo what you said.
Echo knows.
It's fine. We'll talk.
If you're sharing front with someone, if Echo picks on me constantly and tries to get a rise out of me because I can move whenever I want. I have just an enormous amount of front power. So Echo will constantly like address things that I'm doing and really just try to get a rise out of me, and it's very cute. I'm sure they'll get it eventually. Your relationship with your headmates are relationships, so yeah, talking shit in Counter-Strike is going to happen.
God damn it.
Hello. So I got like 4 questions here I've written down. If it's alright. Firstly, this is the first time I've encountered plurality. I didn't even know such a thing exists, so I don't mean to come off disrespectful. I'm just looking at this from a skeptic or agnostic lens, and I really value this eye-opening discussion so I can learn and understand it. So for the first question, does plurality enables an individual to compartmentalize or partition responsibilities and accountability?
Yes, with an asterisk. Oftentimes how people are functional is that certain headmates are good at certain things, and those headmates do those things. It's like any kind of roommate or relationship situation where you try to play to your strengths and have a function. With accountability, it is messy and can get messy. Something that I see a lot, especially in younger systems, is one of their headmates does something and they don't have memory of it, and then they refuse to engage with it. I think it's important to do your best to mitigate, even if it wasn't your fault, even if you have no memory of it. It is still important to address. It's still important to make the person who's talking feel heard and seen, and it is very important to have conversations with the headmate that did something that made someone uncomfortable. If you can pull them out to have them talk, that is good. But a lot of people, it's a very complex situation, because on a very technical level, if you are not in control and have no memory of it, you aren't actually accountable for it. But, and it's a huge but, you are accountable for the people in your lives and the people you are attached to. So it's very difficult to say that, no, you don't have to take accountability, because you carry other folks with you always. And even if they did something sucky, you should do your best to try to help with that healing if they can't or don't have the awareness to. First and foremost, prioritize them doing it instead so that relationship can heal. But if they can't, it does fall on someone. And to just kind of dismiss it can make people in your life feel like they can't be safe. It's an unfortunate thing with plurality. I've had my share of experiences like that, but it is important to recognize the greater context.
Okay, so for the second question, you mentioned that certain triggers can trigger a switch. So I got this friend whom from time to time get drunk, and when they're drunk, a distasteful identity fronts. Then after that night, they sober up and they'll mention that they don't have memory of their drunk activities. Would you say that's plurality and they just not aware that they're plural?
No. Plurality is a very specific thing. A lot of people have that blackout drunk experience. As a general rule, if you think something might be plurality, it's probably not. I would urge everyone to avoid looking for it and avoid like kind of pseudo-diagnosing it. If someone is plural and they're being told that they are plural because something bad happened or they don't remember it or they have amnesia and they're still plural, it can send them into a spiral and cause a lot of problems. It's okay to tell them what happened. Don't diagnose them. If someone is not plural and you tell them that they are, then they can try to dissociate on purpose, which can cause a lot of problems too. When people come to me for help with identifying plurality, I never tell them they're plural. I wait for one of their headmates to do it. I give them the exercises. I talk about communication. I give them a lot of things that I've said in this session. Don't diagnose them. Don't tell them they are. Let them tell you.
All right. So is plurality sort of related to people having multiple unique personas?
No, not usually. People who are creative tend to have characters. And even people who are Therian, who identify very strongly, can have a very strong connection to multiple things. There are people in this room who I know have very strong connections to multiple things. Again, if you think something might be plurality, it's probably not. People are multifaceted. Nobody is one thing. It's talked about a lot where, like, you're different with your friends, or you're different when you get blackout drunk. And that doesn't mean plurality. It just means they're another thing. People can be so much, and everyone contains multitudes, even if those multitudes aren't conscious or a different person.
Okay, last questions. Can two or more identities front at the same time?
Yes. That's if anyone other than me is here, that is what's happening. So that's not normal, but you can practice fronting at the same time. It feels strange to have someone do something, and there's a lot of coordination involved. You have to kind of put your mind in a very strange headspace, but you can work on it, basically. Sharing front is very common, and there's a term that much of the plural community calls blending, where you do it without wanting to, and it's very unpleasant because you kind of aren't sure how to coordinate and you can't talk to each other, and it's multiple people around and everyone gets all blended and mixed. It's very uncomfortable if you're not doing it on purpose. Multiple people in yeah, very soupy. Multiple people in front is called co-fronting, and it's a concept that a lot of plural folks have mastered. If you are able to do like markers, you can be in Discord calls at the same time, and like if people can tell the difference enough, it just feels like you're hanging out together. It is not something that you need to be doing if you're a plural. It's not something that all plural people can do, and it tends to be something that only systems who are very experienced can do. But yeah, so if Echo's around and you say hi, Cress, and ask me to wave, I will wave at you, and Echo can do nothing about it.
That's so mean. New acknowledged.
We're going to finish the line, but I'd ask that nobody else get in line because we are done. I'm willing to stick around and talk to people just in a group setting, but the panel will be over after the line is depleted.
Yeah, sure. Alrighty. I swear my heart rate like tripled. Alright, I had to write this down, so... Oh. Yep. When I view my notes, I let go of the microphone. Give me a second. Okay, I know this might vary per system. How should I get to know someone who is plural? Do I kind of like... Do I try to associate with the headmates I associate with the most? Or should I get to know the whole system? Or should I treat each headmate like its own person? Or like, yeah, that kind of thing.
That's a really good question, and I know it comes from a very good place. There's no answer here. You can't just know. Systems come in all shapes and sizes and want to be considered in all shapes and sizes. Some people may tell you they're plural in confidence and not want you to share it and just treat them like one person. Some people may be completely separate and want to have that separation. Just listen. Try not to push people to be like, hey, when am I going to meet your headmates? They'll come to you if they're interested. And
Gotcha.
Yeah, just listen. Plural people are people. Plural people are often a lot of people. And having experiences with them is not different than just meeting another individual. Because there's an extra thing on top of it, they will. You can ask, and they will guide you. You're not the first person they've met, and everyone gets refined over time. The way that we function and the way I've talked about us functioning is not representative of the whole community. There's a lot of stuff about me and about my system that is not common. There's a lot of stuff that is, but either way, talk to the person you meet, treat them as the person they are, and if you talk about plurality, you can ask about headmates and be like, hey, do you want to introduce me to your friend? For systems that are separate, it can be helpful to just treat them like different people. That's how we function. We all have different accounts for stuff, and for some systems, that's not the case, and they want to be more connected and more separate, together, rather. Yeah.
Oh, sounds good.
That was a very respectful question, and I trust that you'll do fine.
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
Hey, Chris, I'm glad I get to be the last person, I guess, because the line is over, and I know we're running out of time. I'm very good actually meeting you in VR. You're very well spoken and very lovely. So I'm glad to hear it. I have two questions. One is incredibly fun, and the other one is incredibly not. I promise both are not personal. Which one would you prefer? Or both? I can do both.
Let's start with the not fun one, so that we can end on the fun one.
Okay. The not fun one is, you mentioned that there is a lot of apprehension in the plural community when it comes to fusion or integration, where there may be a lack of acceptance in the wider plural community when it comes to seeking those options. Do you find that is more a sense of destroying what makes someone unique, or perhaps a sense of identity, which I know that a lot of us here use as our own labels, regardless of what label you have. But I guess I'm asking, more specifically, why do you think that is? Why do you think there is that kind of pushback?
Okay, this is a long and storied history, and I'm going to try to condense it as much as I can. Prior to the DSM-5, we're going back to the medical system, the only treatment that they had for plural people was kind of akin to conversion therapy. It was pretending, it was gaslighting. There was a lot, and they called it integration, where everyone becomes one, or more commonly, you kill the rest of your alters, which is not something you can actually do because reasons. But for a long time, plural folks had the stigma around them where because they are plural, they are wrong. It's not dissimilar from other communities who are marginalized, where the idea is, don't be that. So that carries forward really heavily. It's very similar to folks who remember and still live through
It's me, isn't it?
some of that. Oh, it is. Tycho just left.
Oh.
I'm going to continue talking, and then hopefully they get back and I can show them the recording after. In the plural community, there's a pretty big divide still today about there's a camp that believes that systems only exist within a medical context, and the only way to go is with treatment, and what they mean by treatment is either integration or fusion, which, and if you don't get diagnosed by a medical professional, you can't be plural, or if you don't have these very specific symptoms, you can't be plural. It's very similar to transmedicalism, if anyone is familiar. And it works on this idea of shared trauma, and it works on the idea that my pain is what makes me real. And I would argue that when you're plural or trans or anything, you make you real. So when folks talk about, hey, welcome back. when folks talk about integration and folks talk about fusion and get really defensive, it's because for many, many years, the way plural folks were studied was unethical. It's because for many, many years, the way plural folks have been treated was unethical. And so the hesitancy to say treatment at all, because you believe that treatment means that, is why it's so traumatic for some people. A lot of older LGBT folks don't say the word queer for that reason. But as treatment for DID and OSTD specifically has gotten better, that the treatment paths are more optimistic and the understanding is better. There's a lot of places in the medical system that do it well, and the general idea within the plural community is that if you fuse, you're losing people. Or, I rely on this headmate for X, I could not stand if they were gone. That's not what happens. In fusion, you don't have everyone fuse into you, or you're not fusing into someone else. You're creating something together. You're doing the thing in the everyone starts plural theory. You're doing the thing that most brains would do at the age of like 7 or 8. And you're not absorbing, you're just becoming with a collective. That's what fusion is. And so when people talk about hesitancy with fusion, that's what they mean. And usually when they talk about hesitancy with integration, they think integration is fusion. Integration just means we work together. I am not that way. I have plenty of DID symptoms still. I'm still working on it through therapy. I would not call us integrated. But if we were, this talk would have stayed the same. Everything that I said about how we function, other than the things that are difficult, would have been the same. You're not losing anyone. And that idea is so prominent that if it gets mentioned in forums or online or in Discord or whatever, the people still will come after folks for saying they're going for it. That's what causes the divide. Is a misunderstanding and the medical system's previous just hatred of disability and hatred of different.
Yeah, thank you very much for answering that. I know that that's not a fun topic or one that's spoken on without a lot of emotion. So thank you for clarifying that. Time for the fun question. Okay, so since we're way over time at this point, and after this, by the way, I think we all need to give Cress just, I guess, I don't know if there's a VR round of applause, but definitely VR head pats, absolutely all of them. But anyways, for the fun question. So plurality is well known for fragmenting, right? But have you found that some headmates actually evolve over time instead of becoming dormant or further fragmenting?
That's a great question. Yes. To answer it simply, to answer it in a more complex way, I talked about headmates that are children or repressed or regressed in some way, rather. Headmates that are dysfunctional in some way. They are people, or in some cases part of a people, and people grow. At least people are able to. And in the same way, they can get past the things that make them dysfunctional or make them regress. I have several people in my system that started as children that aged up, which is a hell of a process that I won't get into at the very end of this. But yeah, people develop a lot. the way I talked about how I split is not super common either. People develop, people change. Tycho, did I miss a second half to that question, or?
No. Just something
Okay.
a little lighter is all.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your questions. I hope this was enlightening. I understand it's probably a little confusing. If you're looking for more resources, there's a few wikis out there that I can recommend, but if you're looking for resources on the medical side, I recommend the CTAC Clinic, like I said before. It's just a channel on YouTube. Mike Lloyd produces a lot of very good content from a clinical perspective. There's several Plurality wikis if you want to get in the weeds. It's very similar to wikis that focus on gender, where if you exist, they'll find a label for you. And personally, as myself, I'd appreciate if I could not have continuing the question session all through the con, but you are certainly free to hit me up on Discord if you need. I want to explicitly thank Tholen for both setting this up and creating this wonderful world for us to be in. What a lovely bird this is. And there it is. Luna, or Trace, you can stop recording.